I call the member for Fadden.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's been a long way since poor Kevin was knifed when the government had lost its way. But as we look at Appropriations Bill 3 and 4, building on Appropriations 1 and 2 coming from supply through the budget, lost its way continues to be a mantra shouted strongly and loudly. The budget and indeed the appropriations continue to have lost their way. There is no finer example of this than looking at the continual disaster which is Labor's border protection policies and suite of policies that wound back in August 2008 some of the most effective protections to ward off the scourge of people smugglers, to the point where over 200 boats and over 9,000 irregular maritime arrivals have come to our shores. What is most vexing is not that people are paying people smugglers to come here to seek a better freedom, that those who sit behind razor wire right now in some of the most desperate conditions of the world are being locked out from coming to Australia because of the current IMAs. It's been said in the Parliament in recent days that if you're in an Afghani refugee camp on the border of one of its neighbours, you have a 1 in 10 chance of your asylum being picked up through the normal channels. If you jump on a boat and pay a people smuggler, that rises to 97%. How the government continues its hollow rhetoric of there are no pull factors is beyond me. But I see in Appropriation Bill number 3, there is $290 million extra for the running costs in the blowout this year for offshore asylum seeker management. In Appropriation Bill number 4, there's $152.8 million in additional capital expenditure for the establishment of the Northern Detention Centre and the Inverbrackie Detention Centre, previously announced by the government. History is always an interesting teller. On the 8th of February 2008, Senator Evans said this: "The Pacific solution was a cynical, costly and ultimately unsuccessful exercise introduced on the eve of a federal election by the Howard government." Is this senator kidding me? He then said the entire project cost a staggering $289 million. Yeah, that $289 million was from a period of September 01 to June 2007 for the Nauru and Manus OPCs, whereby the number of boats dropped from an extraordinary number to 3 a year. There's something like 3 a week at present. $289 million over 7 years. But here we're looking at $290 million in blowout costs for 6 months. Not 7 years, for 6 months. Indeed, the total blowout as a statement of fact for this financial year alone for the asylum seeker debacle is $750 million blowout, and the total blowout in the budgets since Labor watered down the effective border security measures has been $1.4 billion. Fact. And at the current rate of blowout by the end of 11-12 financial year, the amount of money that the budget has blown out because of Labor's failures in this space will be a staggering $1.9 billion, almost getting up to the stakes of the failed pink bat policy and others like green loans, solar and other areas where the waste and mismanagement has been staggering. $1.9 billion is where we're heading. $1.4 billion is where we're at. Surprisingly, those figures are quite close to the new tax the government is seeking to put on Australians. When we speak about the flood levy, that I and my colleagues will certainly vote against, I am reminded that communities around the country continue in great spirit and great goodwill to do whatever they can. Last Saturday night I was at a community concert in Paradise Point, where the council, to their credit, had put on Popera in the park. Thousands and thousands of people attended. The goal was to raise $15,000. The major sponsor was Bendigo Bank. The chairman, Anne Glenister, did a wonderful job with the bank coming there and joining the community. $33,000 was raised by the community, with all the money bypassing the state Labor government and going directly to the mayor at Lockyer Valley. That's the spirit of a generous Australian community. But the more I see and the more I hear about the flood levy and the tax, I see people disappointed that that spirit hasn't been fostered, but is indeed being dampened. And as we look at the appropriation bills, especially in the area of asylum seeker failures, we need to look no more than defence with a strategic reform program, building on the last Hawke-Keating Labor governments where they had a defence reform program, building on the last disaster under Gough Whitlam, who despised defence in the extreme. The SRP was saving $20 billion over 10 years. It's now simply about cuts. And the cuts are damaging operational capability. In typical spin style, Labor came out saying the strategic reform program is not about cutting. It will not impact operational capability. It's about streamlining and efficiency and effectiveness. Yet last financial year, Navy handed back $200 million in maintenance funds. Yet now we can't put an amphibious ship in the water with Tobruk, Kanimbla and Manura completely out of action. Could you imagine if Cyclone Yasi had hit Cairns? Tens of thousands of refugees. Where is the offshore medical facility? Where's the offshore helicopter carrying facility? Where is the capacity for stores and food and water offshore? Nowhere. Nowhere. The minister should be sacked for the negligence in not allowing a full naval amphibious capability to be available when we knew we were entering the cyclone season. We knew that weather patterns were changing from El Nino, and yet nothing. And when the full horror of the lack of amphibious capability was produced to the Australian people, the minister had the hide, the audacity, the temerity to blame the department. The department didn't keep me informed. The department has pulled the wool over my eyes. I'm sorry, I thought under Westminster ministerial accountability, the minister was accountable. But not this minister. The department's at fault. He even went as far to release some of the advice he'd received to show how much at fault the department was, but not him, not this minister. Oh no, he's not responsible. He's just the minister. So now we have no amphibious capability, no ability to respond to disasters overseas, no capacity in countries in our immediate areas that may need assistance. Australian citizens may need assistance. No offshore helicopter capability, no stores, no ability to carry a battalion group, nothing. Because this minister, previously there were two other Labor ministers over 3.5 years, have failed to ensure that the SRP was not a series of cuts. They have failed to ensure that it was simply about efficiency. They have failed. Capability is being impacted. So as I look at the budget, I am deeply concerned as to where this is going in terms of the waste and the management and where it will end. In terms of brief comments, Madam Deputy Speaker, I will simply leave it there and call on the government to address especially the failure in border protection as the dollars keep racking up in amounts of money needed to deal with the continual failures.